Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Ask Professor Paranormal. Okay, my producer just said something. Okay. So we're okay. Yes, yes. All right. Welcome, everybody. And I see a few of our regulars here. That's good to see Paul and Karen and Rinza Quatz. Just welcome, everybody. And as usual, this is kind of a normal show instead of having a guest. I'll be taking your questions and responding to them. Let me start out, as I often do, talking a little bit about what's coming on for our classes at the Rhine Research Center, which are starting a week from tomorrow. So they're starting on, I guess that's August 3rd. My classes are actually on Tuesday and Wednesday evening. My two classes are, one of them is called Presenting the Paranormal to the Public. So anybody who has any interest in learning how to talk to lay people who have no interest or nothing to do with the paranormal, even skeptics, in a way that makes you seem very credible and articulate about the subject without talking over their heads or making them think you're weird. I know that I talked to many people over the years who said they can't talk to sometimes their friends because their friends think this is just a weird subject. There are ways to talk to people about this. And that's one of the things I do cover, how to talk or write or deal with this credibly. Another piece of it is public speaking, in case any of you would like to go out there and speak about the subject, even though it's geared towards speaking about the paranormal, about psychic topics. I will tell you that the public speaking stuff, that I was a public speaking coach for many, many years, taught it at John F. Kennedy University. And I have kind of a generic approach to it. So it's topic agnostic, but I do talk about specifically dealing with it when it comes to the paranormal. And then there is also a week on writing, and just kind of a week on media, working with the media. And here I'm not talking about, I do talk a little bit about getting yourself into interviews or on interviews on shows, podcasts and such, or radio or other things. But really the focus is how to be a good guest, how to be a good interview subject, which is not the same as how to be a good interviewer. And I do touch a little bit about that. I've done hundreds of interviews over the years, And I got to tell you that sometimes the interviewers really suck. It's not the subject. It just they're not very good because they're not even listening. They just have a list of questions they ask. So talk about all that stuff about publishing, about all that. That's presenting the paranormal to the public. The other class is completely different, and that is called Developing Your Intuition. And it's really about developing ESP. I do have some materials about psychokinesis, but it's really about ESP. And I've learned a lot from working with psychics and mediums over the years on this subject. We have exercises, there's a remote viewing experiment, a whole bunch of other stuff that in that class. If you want to try to figure out how you can be psychic or how you can apply any psychic ability you have. The other two classes that are actually happening, one of them is an interesting class called Psi in Christianity, being taught by one of actually a really great podcaster who has taken our courses, and that is Jimmy Akin. So if he has a podcast called Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, I really recommend that one. But he talks about the misconceptions in Christianity about psychic abilities and psychic phenomena, because people have the impression who call themselves Christian, even a lot of Catholics do, that it's all demons, it's all evil and stuff like that. So he's doing a survey around ESP and PK on the subject. And then the last class, which for those of you who are interested in dreaming and especially lucid dreaming, it's called Introduction to Lucid Dreaming. It's being taught by Robert Wagner and Jeffrey Peck. Robert Wagner is one of the leading experts and authors on lucid dreaming. So this is an opportunity to really learn more about that and even how you can become lucid in your dreams. So those, yeah, put in the Rhine links, both links for that. Wouldn't mind. Yeah. Yeah. So the courses start, like I said, the week of August 3rd, evening or very late afternoon for a couple of them. So take a look at the listing. And if you have any interest, we'd love to have you join us in these classes. The other thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to mention this again later, is, and I've got a couple of other topics to talk about, is some exciting news for the Rhine Research Center. So for those of you who've been kind of coming to this Q&A for months, you know about this. The Rhine Research Center last fall lost its lease. Been renting space, including our lab, in a building in Durham, North Carolina, near the Duke campus, kind of a stone's throw from the Duke University campus, and we lost our lease. I say we because I am president of the board of directors of the Rhine. Well, as of the 15th of July, we now are owners of a huge space in a 3-story building. We have one whole floor, not too far from where we were before in Durham. There's a lot of work that's going to be done on the space, but we're all very excited. The board is very excited about this. Number one, because we own the space. We've been in a good financial state to do that. So nobody can really kick us out unless we don't pay our mortgage, of course. And more importantly, once everything gets in there, we're going to have more modernized equipment. We're going to have the library will be back up and running, but there will be space for what John Kruth, the executive director, figures out, anywhere from 50 to 60 people to attend lectures and sessions there, all of which end up on the web as well. So for folks in the North Carolina area, the Research Triangle Park, especially that whole area, we're going to be able to have a lot more people coming in, which we've never been able to do before. So it's going to be a few months. I will talk about progress as things happen, and at some point I'll have photos of what it looks like. But it's a really beautiful space, and we're all very, very, very excited about this. I'll be heading to Durham once we're about ready to open up. We're going to have a big celebration when that happens. So of course I'll let everybody know about that. Anyway, so those are two, that's a really great thing for us. It's been months. The Rhine Center has been doing a lot of stuff online, as we always have, like our classes. We have, for those of you who don't know, it's worth going to the Rhine Online website, which you see in the chat, because you can just put yourself on the email list if you don't want to join. Get notices about the lectures that happen. We've had some really great lecturers come in, and the lectures are on the web. They're all webcast. They are typically Friday late afternoon for those of us on Pacific time, early evening for those on the East Coast. We ask for a donation, but there's no real charge in general for that. They also eventually end up on in our media library, which is available for free. You can go back and watch previous sessions. You can see the media library. It takes a little while for each of the new lectures to get up there, but they're there. So go to the Ryan, explore it, and we hope you join the Ryan Center to support us as well. All right, it's all very exciting. So I'm going to talk about the other thing, a couple other things in a bit. So thank you for the congratulations, everybody. We're very excited. If anybody is in the Durham, Chapel Hill area of North Carolina, we'll be looking for volunteers to help move in and set things up. So we've already had a bunch of our students who are in the area volunteered. So it'll be kind of a fun group effort. I'm sorry I'm not there. Really sorry. Okay. Questions, comments, anything that is popping up for people in general at all? And I'll give it a beat here. I will mention one other thing. A couple of weeks ago, a new documentary movie was launched. It was out there already, but it wasn't available generally to people. And now you can rent it on Prime Video. It's called The Consciousness Connection. And it's a really great film. It talks about the Institute of Noetic Sciences. The Rhine Research Center is a big part of it, and the Monroe Institute. So three major organizations. But the question about consciousness and parapsychology, all of that is throughout that movie. You can rent it. I think it's $9.99 if you want to buy a copy. I bought a digital copy because I'm in it quite a bit. So kind of fun. Okay, on Christianity, J.D. Vance acknowledges that UAPs are anomalous, but suggests they may be demons. I once thought that was a mistake. Now I see it as placing them beyond our current understanding. Yeah, demon is a good catch-all for a lot of stuff. And I can say that we have a lot of people who might be considered demonic in politics these days. There have been people in the past who have especially fundamentalist Christians and some fundamentalists in other religions as well, who have stated that these things flying around were either angels or demons or some other kinds of mystical entities. Odd that they would take the shape that they do, though, I think. So, putting them in the demonic category without any indication. I mean, if anything, we tried to shoot these things down. I have to say the abduction stuff is hard to parse out, partly because the number of people who have essentially been abducted or believe that they were abducted is way out of line. Just way too many people, especially from major cities, with no other evidence at all. Maybe if they had a transporter, but that's not, like in Star Trek. But pulling people out in the midst of very crowded areas is highly unlikely, to say the least, especially the numbers of people. And oddly enough, it seems like there's more people who have been abducted in the U.S. than anywhere else, which leads to other conspiracy theories we won't even talk about. So if that's been done, if people have been abducted, they've been returned, even though maybe they've been abused. But then again, we see that kind of activity amongst living people, sadly, doing that sort of thing to kids and other people too. So it's hard to call that demonic. It's certainly not pleasant. It's not good. But again, it doesn't represent the majority of UAP sightings. And we try to shoot them down. And, depending on who you believe, we might have shot a couple of them down. Shooting first without asking questions, that kind of thing. So I think we're kind of acting more demonically than they are, if whatever they are. Another suggestion, Carl Jung actually made this suggestion early on, that some of these, and I will say that Dr. J. Allen Hynek also talked about this a little bit, but Jung suggested that some of these were actually psychic projections of living people, fears and things like that. Certainly, post World War II, in the nuclear era, there, if you look at science fiction films and invasion films, a lot of the invasion films by aliens was kind of representative or metaphorical for the Red Scare that was going on at the time. But it was always kind of evil aliens and all that kind of thing, with rare exceptions that happened. And sci-fi has always kind of shown that. So having things show up like in the movies or vice versa, that were out there flying around, psychic projections was one of the possibilities. Problem with psychic projections is they technically wouldn't be caught on radar. So that leads to more nuts and bolts hardware. But as Hynek did say, perhaps not all of them are nuts and bolts hardware in that sense. So, and yes, an invasion from inner space more than outer space. Yeah. Just saw a great post of a mug with a picture of Sigmund Freud, and it said, "Ego and superego walk into a bar. The bartender says, 'Show me your ID,' as in id." So for those of you into psychology, or know the movie Forbidden Planet, it's a pretty funny statement. Yeah, that was really yeah, that's kind of great. Anyway, we have more fear. We have fear about a lot of stuff. Humans have natural fears of things, and certainly have a fear of psychic abilities. Whether you are fearing the psychic abilities of others, which is what shows up in religion, and certainly actually shows up amongst the debunking skeptics as well. Many of them have significant fear of ESP and potential for psychokinesis, uh, which is often demonstrated in any discussions you might have with them. So fear is a problem that is interesting. There was a study, actually several studies done by Charles Tart years ago, surveys done of the general public, surveys done of parapsychologists, also surveys done of psychics. And a good percentage of all three groupings, populations, had fear of psi, including parapsychologists and including psychics. They have fear, maybe not of their own psi, but the psi of other people, psychic abilities of other people. Wind and water qigong. Hey there. Let's see. I'm curious how your views about paranormal change over time. So one of the things that when I got into the field, which was early on in my life, before I was always interested in ghostly things and all that stuff. I'd read a lot of books on the subject. We had a parapsychology club in my high school. I got to meet some New York area parapsychologists. I was really more focused on ESP than anything else. A little bit on PK, but mostly ESP. And originally, until I got into college, I was thinking I was going to try to work towards being a researcher in the laboratory on ESP specifically. Again, though still interested in ghost stuff, but it really was a couple of things that happened for me in college that changed my tune and really focused me a little bit more in other ways. One was a switch from an astrophysics major to anthropology and focusing on cross-cultural beliefs on supernatural stuff and the magic stuff and how that related to parapsychology really opened me up to a lot of stuff cross-culturally. And I got really interested in people's experiences that way rather than laboratory stuff. The other was I sucked at statistics in college. I was fine in grad school, but didn't do well in stats. And statistics is a big part of laboratory research. So didn't like the math. And that led me, after the anthro stuff, really led me to turn around. And even though I'm interested in read the laboratory work and have actually consulted and sometimes because of my magic background with on that, and I've done experiments with psychokinesis as well. really focused me towards people's experiences. And then one of the first courses I took at JFK University in grad school was in field investigation, and that fit in with my anthro work, and that really shifted me there. But I will say that I did not have a particular opinion about whether apparitions, conscious entities really existed. Was there life after death? Hadn't, I mean, there clearly was evidence in the literature, but I didn't have a particular belief myself or even a particular opinion about it. One of the cases I had in the early 80s were the only possible explanation that I came up with that was there, given the amount of information we got, the kind of information we got from the one person in the family. Out of all the four who were seeing the ghost, the one person who was communicating with the ghost, a kid, a 12-year-old boy, absolutely convinced me that apparitions are conscious entities, are real. And I also started working with mediums and seeing the evidence there. So all of that shifted me to a real focus on number one, field investigation, which includes poltergeist cases, which are living people, the haunting, the distinction between hauntings and apparition cases, working with mediums and psychics, all of that shifted me over the years quite a bit. And I don't know that there's any there have been little tweaks along the way as I've learned, but I can't think anything other that was real major for that. Paul, oh, and thank you, Wind and Water Qigong. Yeah. Um, I don't know that everybody sucks at stats, but didn't really like it. Okay. So, Paul, I'm looking into getting into parapsychology outside of the Ryan Institute, Ryan Research Center. Is there any other, are there any other recommendations? Um, the there are other courses that are available. The Kessler unit of the University of Edinburgh, that's the parapsychology unit in the psych department, does have a couple of online courses as well, research-oriented courses. There are many universities in the UK, of course, that have courses in anomalistic psychology and/or parapsychology, which are related. And there are a couple of places that offer a master's in parapsychology in the UK, possibly a PhD. In the US, currently, the one school, and I believe they do stuff online as well, distance as well, is the California Institute for Human Sciences, a relatively new university in Encinitas, California, Southern California. So that is one place to get academic credit for parapsychology. Jeffrey Mishlove is the person who is running that program, but there are other researchers involved in that program as well. So that's where it is. Unfortunately, there really aren't that many organizations. There's the Institute for Noetic Sciences. There's the Monroe Institute in Virginia. It's just the funding has dried up. There are a number of other people who may be working at various universities who are members of the Parapsychological Association, but I don't really have a good list for you for that. Been outside with friends and kids under the night sky, pointing out tiny lights that look like stars move slowly, zigzagging like water droplets on a window. They are amazed, yet not. Of course, satellites are up there too. They do move fairly slowly, and based on the spin of the Earth, sometimes they look like they're zigzagging. Um, it just really depends, and then there are other celestial things that you might be picking up on it too. Um, I understand the amazed but not. When people go see right now, the Perseid meteor shower is starting to build. The height of that meteor shower is, I think, August 7th through 9th. And if you can go outside and kind of get a lounge chair, a nice lounge chair or something, and put it down and lay down and look at the night sky, assuming you don't have too much light pollution, you'll see somewhere upwards of 100. If you're looking kind of widely at the sky, I think it's something like 100 meteors shooting stars per hour, maybe even more than that. So I've seen that a number of times. The first time you see it's really amazing. Afterwards, you do get used to it, I have to say. Not baseball fanatic. Okay. Interesting at the place figuring out the reality of apparitions. Yeah. Oh, it's Angela. Hi, Angela. Okay. You have to succeed the Kessel run. Nice try. It's Kessler. Nice try. All right. Okay. Let's talk about, since we're talking about some parapsychology stuff here, the Parapsychological Association, which is the organization of researchers and other folks directly in the field, in itself, it's just parapsychological.org. You can join as an affiliate if you have some academic background. You can also join as a student if you are a student, and there are supporter memberships as well. But right now, for free, you can um, get, yeah, and this is the link that is now on there. It's a link directly to the abstracts for the papers that are going to be presented at the annual meeting or convention of the Parapsychological Association next month. So the abstracts were just released a couple days ago. It's a fairly hefty document, but readable. I mean, abstracts are typically very readable. It's a little over 100 pages because there's so many of them. There's kind of a little bit of something for everything. There's research on working with mediums in criminology. I'm just looking at the list right now, a blinded discrimination test of coherence in tarot as a symbolic system. There's a couple articles on investigations. There are panel discussions here on the ethics of training and applying psychic ability, psychopacity. So there's quite a bit of interesting stuff. And before anybody asks, I'm not going because it's in Australia this year, unfortunately. Last year, it was in Scandinavia, if I recall correctly. They've been hesitant to come back to the United States, partly because of what's going on in the United States. We have a lot of European members and folks elsewhere. This is the first time it's ever been held in Australia. And there is a very robust, perhaps small, but robust group of folks in Australia doing research and investigation in parapsychology. There's an Australian Institute for Parapsychological Research that you can link to from my resources page on my website. But this year it's in Sydney. Next year, I don't know where it's going to be. I'd like it to be back in the United States. We'll see what happens at this point. Okay. Okay, so can you tell me more about ghosts? Do you think everybody becomes a ghost after the physical body perishes? So if we define a ghost as somebody who's stuck around, who has not moved to the other side, looking at consciousness after death, want to call that a spirit, that's fine. Most people seem to move on. Most people do not. Maybe there's an intermediary moment, because the vast majority of ghost experiences that are conscious or interactive tend to be people who at the moment of death, or usually within about a week, it's usually a couple of days, they show up in some way, shape, or form to people they know, family, friends, loved ones, relatives, all of that. And then they say it's kind of a goodbye thing, and then they go away. They just move on to the next level of whatever it is. It's rare. It's a small percentage of people who stick around as apparitions or ghosts, as most people use that term, kind of still here in the physical world. So they're not in another dimension. They're here. It's the consciousness is still in the physical world and interacting with us. And whether everybody hits that intermediary period, we don't really know, because not everybody connects with other folks. There are psychics that and others who have said, well, ghosts are everywhere. They see them everywhere. There's some serious issues with that. And very often what it amounts to is that they are very psychic, perhaps, and they are picking up on echoes or recordings of people, what we call residual hauntings. I have met a number of psychics, including a couple that we ended up working with, who at the very start didn't know the difference between a non-conscious recording in the environment, a residual haunting of a person, and an actual ghost or apparition, because they never thought about it or never tried to talk to that non-conscious recording of a person. The thing about that really differentiates the two more than anything else is that most apparitions, conscious entities, are actually of the dead. There is a category we have of living apparitions. Usually it's when people go out of body and they are perceived by other people more or less as a ghost. But when it comes to residual hauntings, those imprints, those recordings or imprints are made in the environment by the activity of living people, not dead people. Right? So this is a really important distinction between what people think of ghosts or hauntings rather, and what we can determine. Dead people leave no impression behind because they may exist as an apparition, but we haven't seen any evidence of an apparition creating a recording, more or less, residual hauntings. Living people very clearly leave these hauntings behind. We affect the environment with our emotions. We affect the environment with our activity. Not everybody experiences them. In fact, most people don't, except sometimes at an emotional level. It's actually fairly easy for us to pick up the emotion that is imprinted in an environment if it's very strong emotion that's there. So it's one of those things that you have to, even if the figure you see is of someone who died 50 or 100 years ago, that imprint, that recording of that figure, the thing you're seeing, you're perceiving psychically, because you don't pick them up with your eyes, you pick them up with your psychic abilities, that was made when that person was alive. Just like movies from the 1930s. In fact, one of my all-time favorite movie series is the Thin Man movies with William Powell and Myrna Loy, from the 30s and 40s. They're both dead. They made them when they were in their prime. I can watch those movies anytime I want. I have the DVDs. I have one of them in digital. But they made them when they were alive. And in fact, the entire crew that made them was alive, and all the other actors were alive. They're not anymore. So we are watching the dead, but they were alive when they made it. And that's the really important thing you have to really remember for this. We look at ghosts as apparitions, as consciousness. Now, you can call it spirit, soul, whatever you want. I will tell you that mediums, many mediums, the ones I work with for the Forever Family Foundation, often make a distinction between a ghost, which is a person who is still here in the physical world, who has not moved on yet, and a spirit who is projecting back the people they communicate with on the other side. That's a very different thing. My colleague, Mariah Kunau, who is known as the Paranormal Concierge as well, who's a great medium that I work with. She is part of several spirit circles, mediumship circles, and she's been surprised at the number of mediums she's met over the years who are shocked that she actually does ghost investigations because they are afraid of earthbound ghosts, they say. Fine with the spirits on the other side, but the ones who are here, they're afraid. And generally it's because of folklore more than anything else. Let's see here. Paul is saying, what are my thoughts on superstitions? You know, superstitions come from various cultures. I mean, there's not like a bank of superstitions where you can say they're all cross-cultural. They're all the same for everybody. You know, the Egyptians worshipped cats. So a black cat crossing your path was a lucky thing, perhaps. That's one thing, you know, going under a ladder is bad luck. There are books that give you the origin of many superstitions. I mean, breaking a mirror in the 7 years fast bad luck is because a mirror at the time, going back hundreds of years, mirrors reflected the soul. And when you break the mirror, you're breaking your soul or someone else's soul. That's bad luck. Walking under a ladder probably is bad luck if there's a person on the ladder with a paint can. You know, there's other reasons why these things can happen. Superstitions, there's a reason for them originally. They don't really, I don't really play with them. I don't really care in that respect. There's a great episode for those who are old enough to remember The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves, which is on some of the streaming services still. It was made during the 1950s. With the center piece was Clark Kent doing an investigative report, was going into a club of people who violated superstitions constantly. That was they start the meeting with breaking a mirror, and they walk under ladders and do all sorts of other stuff. And one of the members got murdered or killed. And of course, there was the whole superstition thing that came in. It's a great episode that I remember very well. Okay, Paul. um, First book I read on ghosts back in 1988 was Peter Underwood, Ghost Hunter's Guide, The Ghost Hunter's Guide. I have 2 copies of that book. I also have a digital copy because it is available now on Kindle. In fact, I think it's been reprinted in hard copy. Peter Underwood, for those of you that might know the name Hans Holzer, who was kind of known as the ghost hunter of the 1960s and into the early 70s, he wasn't the first one to use that term, by the way. Peter Underwood was his British equivalent, and he wrote dozens of books about haunted locations in the British Isles, and also wrote about Borley Rectory, very famous case in the UK. He wrote a book called The Ghost Hunter's Guide. Is actually a really good book. I have recommended, since it is available today. Anybody who does ghost hunting should read that book. There is no tech in it, no electronic equipment. It was written well before that. It gives you good investigative technique. A lot of it, it was one of the books, one of the many books that informed my ESP hauntings and poltergeists. I know that others were impressed by it. Peter Underwood was also the president for many years of the London Ghost Club, which is actually it's not very active. They do have a website. It's never really been as active as the Society for Psychical Research, but the Ghost Club was founded, I believe it was 1860 that was founded, and it still exists to some extent. Like I said, they have a website. You can Google London Ghost Club and get to their website. And there's some interesting stuff on there. And certainly I do recommend Underwood's books. Absolutely. Thanks for mentioning him, because I don't think I've ever talked about him on this show. There are people, uh, every once in a while I get contacted by someone to do a podcast, and they'll say on the show as part of the introduction, Lloyd Auerbach, he's a pioneer of the paranormal. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not that old. There's a lot of folks out there in the paranormal community who are not aware that the history of the field, parapsychology and psychical research before that, goes back into the 1800s. In fact, officially, we consider 1882 as the start of the field with the Society for Psychical Research. A lot of literature. There's a ton of stuff that's available on the Internet Archive, which is just simply archive.org. All these books that are out of print, all these journals that are out of print, that are out of copyright right now. Graveyard Grog mentions Harry Price. He was the man out of the UK who popularized the term ghost hunter, called himself the ghost hunter. But there is, and I'll put this name in the chat here, an author. He's a folklorist named Tim Prassel. Look him up. I've got a couple of great books by Tim Prassel. One of them is on Victorian ghost stories. Another one's on pre-Victorian ghost stories before the Victorian age. And in fact, he's got a website. Can't recall the name of it off the top of my head, but he has like a Ghost Hunters Hall of Fame on the website. But more importantly, he's been doing research, and I haven't checked more recently to see if he's found anything older than this. But because so much literature has gotten scanned and is being uploaded into the Internet Archive and other places, he found references to the term ghost hunting as far back as the 1790s. So when I hear sometimes, like I have heard some of the TV ghost hunters claim that so-and-so is the first, started using the term ghost hunting when the show started, that is more than 200 years off. It's just a bizarre of that. So yeah, and there are some great videos of Harry Price out there as well. controversial character. Um, for anybody who's interested, Harry Price was not happy with the Zener cards, the typical ESP cards. He didn't like some of the symbols, so he created his own telepathic cards. And there is a company called Artisan Tarot for anybody who's into tarot cards and wants courses and things, and even some of the free lectures. I'll just put the link in here. It's artisantarot.com. They have reproduced Harry Price's telepathic cards. And there was even a lecture on Harry Price that they did, and some material on the website about Harry Price and the telepathic cards and other things. They're slightly different. If I had known, I would have had a deck here in front of me. I have them in the other room because I ended up buying a couple decks of those. Kind of interesting stuff. But I do recommend Tim Prassell's stuff. It's fascinating. He also writes fiction, kind of ghost and detective type fiction as well. So do recommend his stuff. In fact, I've got, yes, this is also one of his books. This is the first one I bought of his, and it's called Spectral Edition. And what this is ghost reports from U.S. newspapers, 1865 to 1917. So if you want to read, he's kind of pulled them. He didn't duplicate the actual photocopy the article. He transcribed the articles. There's some fun stuff in here. There's short pieces of ghost situations from all over U.S. and newspapers. And this was the first one I bought, but then he started producing these other things on ghost hunting, ghost investigations, and other things. So it's a really good stuff. Let's see if he has his website in here as well. I'll have to get his website, and I'll put it up somewhere at some point. But definitely recommend his stuff. And back to, of course, to Peter Underwood. All right. The other thing I want to mention, so early on in this session, I mentioned the courses from the Ryan Education Center, which include a couple courses I'm teaching. If you're interested, I'm just putting the link back in here. Take a look at the courses we're offering here. Thank you, Graveyard Grog. I may not be a pioneer of the paranormal, but I will say I'm very happy always to hear that people got into this field because they found ESP hauntings and poltergeists and read that. I've heard that from people, including Steve Gonzalez, who was on Ghost Hunters. And yesterday, actually, I was at an event honoring one of the luminaries in parapsychology and transpersonal psychology, Stanley Krippner, who's in his late 90s at this point. He just got an award, kind of a lifetime achievement award from the Association for Transpersonal Psychology, and there was a kind of a party event for him. And I ran into somebody who was a student of mine at JFK University, taking a couple of my parapsychology courses many years ago. And he pulled me aside. I remembered his name. I wouldn't have recognized him, but he pulled me aside and said to me that because of me, because of my courses, he ended up getting into and working with Stan Krippner directly for many years, kind of as an assistant for things. So that's always heartwarming for me to hear. Still doesn't make me a pioneer because I'm not that old. Maybe an influence. I was an influencer at one point. Yeah, I will be producing. I'm saying this now. I still have a little bit of work to do on it. A 40th anniversary edition of ESP Hauntings and Poltergeists this fall. And I will be adding a little bit of a new information to it. Not a lot, but I've got a few things that I'm adding to it and going to update a little bit. The one section I can't possibly update, for those of you who have read that book, there's a whole section on the time I wrote it in 1985 on movies and TV and comic books For me to update that would mean writing a whole nother book. And maybe one day I will do that. In fact, I'm looking at possibly doing that because in the fall, I'll be teaching in a 4-week class called Pop Culture Paranormal, which is about movies and TV and comic books and things like that that deal with ghosts and hauntings and um, psychic stuff. It's a fun class. So, and Tina, I assume you're asking who is still alive. Is that Harry Price is not alive? Peter Underwood is no longer alive. Tim Prassel is definitely alive. I'm still alive, I think. But anyway, Stanley, Stan Krippner, for those of you who have never heard of him, he contributed so much to the field of parapsychology, also to shamanism, to healing. He's done healing research, dream research, all sorts of stuff. He was a co-author of the book called Dream Telepathy, which had its 50th anniversary edition a couple of years ago, doing the original dream telepathy research at Maimonides Medical Center in New York. So anyway, yeah, Tina, I'd love to do New York Comic Con one day. I'd love to do any of the Comic Cons. One of these days, maybe I'll get to do San Diego Comic Con as a speaker. In any event, the other event that I wanted to talk about is something the Forever Family Foundation is putting on. I will tell you that we are more than half full. We've already pre-sold seats, so we are more than half full. October 24th and 25th, with a special dinner on the 23rd, an optional special dinner. The Forever Family Foundation is putting on an event, which is a psychic and mediumship development conference. We have limited seating just because of where it is, of what we're doing. And it's going to be in Burbank, California, at the Hotel Burbank. So really good location, not too far from the Burbank Airport. For those of you who might be in or going to Southern California, I'm going to be driving down from Northern California. It's going to be a great conference. There's going to actually be 2 tracks. One track is directed at people who want to become more psychic or hone their psychic abilities. It will be with some of our mediums and psychics. There'll be some other folks working with them as well. The other track will be more, I don't want to say miscellaneous, but we have a session on the evidence for life after death. I'm doing a session on investigations, a brief session, and specifically targeting apparitional stuff and how to deal with those sorts of things. I'm also doing a session called Psy Games, which is a mini version of what's been done. In fact, sort of a mini version, not exactly the same as Psy Games International, which is happening next weekend on the East Coast. We've been doing Psy Games at the Rhine Center for a couple decades at this point. But people will play games and, to be psychic, to see how psychic they are. And then I'm also going to be doing a spoon bending party for folks. And I'll cap it off. We have other speakers, several are mediums. They also have me just talk me into doing for the entire group, everybody, not just for one track or the other. I'll be doing my Professor Paranormal Psychic Mind Theater Mentalism show as well. In the meantime, that Friday night dinner will be featuring, among other, just a couple of our mediums for the Forever Family Foundation. And for those of you who don't know, the Forever Family Foundation has done testing and certifying of mediums. It's something we've done for a long time. And it's one of the best known mediums that we have is Laura Lynn Jackson. And she's very well known. The other medium who will be there on Friday night is Travis Holt, who's I have not met before. He only recently was certified, but he's been around that world for quite some time. And the dinner will be a special dinner, and then Laura Lynn and Travis will be doing gallery readings, so kind of group readings as well. And we do have mediums doing readings also during the conference itself. So Graveyard Grog, if you put that long link into the chat for the Forever Family event, there it is. You can also just go to foreverfamilyfoundation.org, go to events, and click through to the right event in October. So it'll be a fun conference. We're going to try to make it fun. And yes, Graveyard Grog, I am not dressing up as the Tick, although you will hear me say spoon very often. But it'll be a lot of fun. Um, anyway, it'll be a great kind of conference. And for those of you who might want to come and just chat, meet me and others. We're going to have some other stuff on Saturday night after dinner, and we have the whole schedule's up on that link. You can find that. Um, but Laura Lynn Jackson will also be doing one of the lecture sessions for us as well on signs. So there'll be some good people there. All right, let's go back and see what else we got here. Yes, and I know Graveyard Grog was doing the Tick because of the spoon thing. And of course, I have some Tick figures here as well. One of my favorite comic book and cartoon characters as well. And the 2 Tick shows are now on Netflix. So the 2 that were done. Not the cartoon, unfortunately. All right. Other questions, other things that folks might have at this point. All right. For those of you that have heard murmurings of this, and I think we talked about this a while back, Games International is happening next weekend in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a big event. It's competitive. They actually have teams of people doing psychic tasks and a lot of spectators and a lot of other activities. My colleague John Kruth from the Rhine Research Center, who is our executive director, is one of the judges there. And Laura Lynn Jackson will be speaking and will be doing something there as well. Unfortunately, I'm not getting to that. I'm really hoping they do one in the West Coast next year, or a way for me to get involved otherwise. It's just not the timing right now. So if you go to SciGamesInternational.com, you'll see what it's all about. It's pretty cool. Some really interesting stuff that they do and have done in the past. And the thing that's really interesting, and I'll just kind of mention this, one of the things I actually do in my course, Developing Your Intuition, is one of the pieces that I focus on is a game I created for a Game Show Network TV show that was went through a pilot. Then it went through a week-long training testing thing, which I got involved in, and a run through for the executives of the Game Show Network. This is back in 2005, 2002, early 2000s. And they had come to me after doing a pilot. There was a game show proposed called Telepathy. And the idea was you have pairs of people who were well connected. They thought they might be telepathic with each other, whether they're related, whether they were just good friends or lovers or whatever else. And they put them through these, games to win and make money. The problem was that it was more like a match game than it was something psychic. So they had me come in and develop a game, kind of one of the 3 games that they were going to do in the show that would be more psychic. And I did come up with something that is something I teach and talk about, which is really a goofy game that at some point I need to package up because it's something people can play at home. And we don't have enough time to talk about it today, but unfortunately, the show actually got picked up by the Game Show Network. And we had amazing results by having people practice. The coordinator actually found couples or other people to run throughout the week, and we were running them through my game and some other stuff, and they got better and better and better. And then when we came to the run through, they did incredibly well. So it's not a surprise that people do great things at side games because people are cheering them on because it's a game, it's fun. That's why spoon bending works, because you make it fun. The show was picked up, but then before it went into production, the president, vice president, and a couple other people were ousted at the Game Show Network by their parent company. And the new people came in and said, if it's not in production, it's canceled. We want to create our own shows. So it's too bad because it really would have changed the tone with the general public. Make something a game show, it becomes normalized. All right, are the psychic imprints of the apparitions tied to physical locations? The imprints are tied to the location, yes, or to objects sometimes. But apparitions themselves, conscious apparitions, are not tied to a location. They may think they are because that's pop folklore, but they're not. Very clearly, we have ghosts that have traveled quite a bit. Um, so it's really the imprints, because the imprint is made. You can think of it as being in the energy field. It's not really. I can't even say it's an energy field, but it's in the psychic field of the location. So it's information stored in that location. And unless you move, I mean, if it's in the house and you move the house, yeah, sure. If it is in some object, yeah, you might be able to move the object because that's how you have haunted objects. But apparitions, the conscious people who've stuck around after death, are not stuck unless they think they are. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that seem to think that. So for anybody here, not saying that you should be in a hurry to become a ghost, but if you ever become a ghost, just know you can go anywhere on the planet and probably off planet. I'm going to see about that. Since Ingo Swann and a few other folks have reportedly gone out of body and traveled to the outer planets. The Burbank Hotel is not haunted as far as I know. It used to be a Holiday Inn. It's actually two buildings with kind of an area in between for parking and such. And I have not heard anything about it being haunted at all. I've been in a couple of hotels that turned out to be haunted, although I didn't know about it until afterwards. Uh, um, but I will certainly check. I mean, we're certainly going to be asking, and of course, we're going to have mediums there. So it's a couple psychics. We'll find out, and I'll be able to report back. Okay, and Graveyard Guard, I think when we die, we are given admin rights, can literally do anything and go anywhere. That is correct. But the problem is that most people are still thinking um, about the ghost stories and things they hear. And the story is you're stuck. We working with psychics and mediums and witnesses over the years, there's not a single reason why a person sticks around as a ghost. Not one single reason. You hear from some people that it's because they don't know that they're dead. Yes, sometimes that is the case, but generally that is also related to them being in denial that they're dead. Sometimes they have unfinished business, but that usually is unfinished business with the family. Sometimes they are very possessive of the home that they built or lived in for so long, or the place that they existed in when they were alive, and they don't like to see anybody else there. They're possessive, like human beings. Sometimes they're afraid to move on, literally, because they don't know if they're heaven or hell, or they think they might be going to hell. And sometimes they say they didn't see the light, so they didn't know what to do. Well, the light is a bit of folklore. It does come from near-death experiences in many cultures, but not all cultures. It's not necessarily a real thing. And of course, Poltergeist, the movie Poltergeist said, don't go into the light. So if they didn't see the light, we give them ideas of how they can move on for that. If we were stuck, we might just need to uninstall the current update and reinstall a previous version. That's right. Although you don't want to get stuck in the cloud. So you want to move on to somewhere else. Anyway, um, it is just about time now. I'll just kind of mention a couple things. First of all, let me say that if you think of something after the show, after you've watched the show, and I'm also talking to the folks who are watching the recordings, if you think of a topic or a question and you want me to talk about it, let's say on the next show, well, here's an email you can use. It's just Ask Professor Paranormal. Oh, that's actually not right. I take that back. Ask Prof Paranormal is the actual email. And this is one you can actually just email me with a topic, with a question. It's a way to get in touch with me. You can also just go to Prof Paranormal, which is some of you may already have. That's my main email address. I check them all anyway. You can also go to my website, which is just lloydauerbach.com, and click on the contact button. I get those emails. I just reply to them pretty quickly. Um, and yes, if anybody becomes an apparition, hopefully not before I die, because I guess I'm probably older than a lot of you. Um, but do come by and say hi. Uh, I have people often ask me, it's just kind of a last closing thing. People often ask me when I've gone to haunted places, am I afraid that I'll get a spectral hitchhiker coming home? And the answer is no. I'm never afraid of that because I'm not afraid of ghosts at all. I'm worried about living people. I'm not afraid of ghosts or the paranormal in general. And if somebody kind of follows me home, if they make themselves known, we'll have a conversation. But I'm not too worried about them being around because I think they'll probably find some of my normal stuff that I do is pretty boring. So, it's usually a lot more fun. So do please let me know if you have any questions. Again, it's just askprofparanormal at gmail.com or just profparanormal at gmail.com. Send me an email if you have a question. So you don't forget if you come back next time. Send me a topic you'd like me to focus on. Happy to do that. I have folks from different parts of the country or the world. I have somebody in Scotland occasionally sends me a topic. Happy to do that anytime. All right. And we can talk about Ouija boards next time if you like. And I can show some of the weird ones I've got. It is just a board game. Yeah, it allows for automatic writing, but that doesn't mean anything otherwise. Remember that if Ouija boards were evil, the factory that makes Ouija boards would be an incredibly dangerous place to work at. So, on that note, everybody have a good couple of weeks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night.